Assalamu alaikum and good day. Today we are going to look into cellular adaptation and reversible cell injury. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe the differences between the various adaptation, hyperplasia, hypertrophy, atrophy, and metaplasia, explain the causes and mechanism of cell injury, describe reversible cell injury, fatty change, hydropic degeneration, and briefly about intracellular accumulation. First, we look into what is pathology, which is a study of structural, biochemical, and functional changes in cells, tissues, and organs that underlie a disease. We will look into four aspects of the disease, which is etiology, the initiating cause of the disease, pathogenesis, the sequence of molecular, biochemical, and cellular events that lead to the development of the disease, morphologic changes, the structural alterations in cells or tissues that are characteristic of a disease, and clinical manifestations, the end result of functional abnormalities that lead to the signs and symptoms of the disease, as well as the progression of the disease. Injury to the cell is a basis of all diseases. The normal cell would like to maintain homeostasis. When the cell undergoes stress, they can undergo adaptation that allows cell to survive and continue to function. If the stress is removed, the cell can return to its original state without any harmful consequence. However, if the limit of adaptive response is exceeded, or the stimuli causes injury to the cell, cell injury occurs. If the injurious stimuli is mild and transient, the cell injury is reversible, and the cell can return back to its normal cell. However, if the injurious stimuli is persistent or severe, the cell undergoes irreversible cell injury and cell death. Cellular adaptations are cells' capacity to change their structure in size, number or phenotype, and function in response to various physiological and pathological conditions. The purpose of adaptation is to protect from injury, and the adapted cell is neither normal nor injured. There are four possibilities in cellular adaptation, which is hyperplasia, hypertrophy, atrophy, and metaplasia. Hyperplasia is defined as increase in the size of an organ or tissue caused by an increase in the number of cells. Therefore, the cells must be capable of undergoing mitosis. It can occur both in physiological and pathological condition. Hormonal stimulation causes endometrium to increase in size during proliferative phase of menstrual cycle. The breast can enlarge in breastfeeding mothers, and the uterus enlarge in pregnancy. It can be compensatory after partial removal of the liver, where the liver cells can regenerate and return to its normal size. Excessive hormone growth factor stimulation of target tissue can lead to pathological hyperplasia. One example is endometrial hyperplasia, when there is excess estrogen, and this can progress to malignancy. Hyperplasia results from growth factor-driven proliferation of mature cells, or by increased output of new cells from tissue stem cells. After partial hepatectomy, growth factors are produced in the liver, and this will activate signaling pathways that stimulate cell proliferation. Hypertrophy is defined as an increase in the size of an organ or tissue due to an increase in the size of a cell. It can be seen in physiologic conditions such as hypertrophy of skeletal muscle in muscle builder. It can also be seen in pathologic conditions such as hypertrophy of the heart in hypertension. Hypertrophy occurs as a result of increase in the protein synthesis and an increase in the size or increase in the number of intracellular organelles. This causes cells to enlarge, and the end result is a larger organ. It can also increase the functional capacity of the organ. Hypertrophy may occur with hyperplasia. An increase in workload causes hypertrophy of the skeletal muscle of a muscle builder. You can see the skeletal muscle cells are bigger in hypertrophic conditions compared to the normal. When the heart has to work against an increased pressure to pump out blood from the heart, it can undergo hypertrophy. You can see the adapted myocyte is larger than the normal myocyte, which leads to a larger heart size than normal. Smooth muscle cells of the uterus are stable cells, and this means they are capable of cell division. They respond to stress by undergoing both hyperplasia and hypertrophy. Non-dividing cells or permanent cells like the myocyte in the heart can only increase tissue mass by hypertrophy. Atrophy is defined as decrease in the size of an organ or tissue due to decrease in the mass of the cells. Physiological atrophy is seen when the uterus returns to its normal size after delivery and the thymus decreases in size in adulthood. When you cut the nerve supply to a muscle, the muscle will atrophy as a result of loss of nerve stimulation. When a woman undergoes menopause, there is loss of the estrogen stimulation to the uterus and the uterus shrinks in size. An elderly person's brain is smaller than a young person's brain as a result of decreased blood supply to the brain due to atherosclerosis of the blood vessels. When someone had a fracture and the limb is put in a cast, the muscle of the limb is unused for a period of time and undergoes disuse atrophy. A growing tumor compresses the surrounding organs and may reduce the blood supply to the surrounding organ, which causes atrophy. Ischemia, a decrease in blood supply to an organ, as we have discussed in aging and pressure, can cause atrophy. And protein malnutrition can cause muscle mass to reduce in size by atrophy. Atrophy is caused by reduction of the cell's structural components. The main event in atrophy is degradation of the proteins. There are two major systems for degradation of protein, which is lysosomes and the ubiquitin proteasome pathway. The atrophic cells are diminished in function, but they are not dead. One of the brain is from an elderly person and another from a young person. Can you guess which one is from an elderly person? Is it A or B? Why did you choose your answer? These two pictures show the endometrium from a reproductive age woman who still have hormonal stimulation and the endometrium from a postmenopausal woman who lacks estrogen stimulation. Note that in the atrophic endometrium, the number of glands are reduced and the endometrium is thinner compared to the one with proliferative endometrium. The last adaptation is metaplasia, which is defined as replacement of one differentiated cell by another differentiated cell type. Metaplasia is due to reprogramming of the stem cell in the epithelium or in the mesenchymal cell in connective tissue. Once the stimulus is removed, metaplastic cells can return to its normal state. The bronchus lining cells in a smoker undergoes metaplasia from columnar cell to squamous epithelium due to the exposure to the cigarette content. If the person stops smoking, the squamous cells returns back to the normal columnar cells. This is because squamous cell can protect better from the cigarette content. Patients with acid reflux disease, where gastric acid goes back to the esophagus, can have metaplasia from squamous to columnar epithelium of the esophagus. This is because columnar epithelium can protect the esophagus better from acid than squamous epithelium. These are the key concepts of cellular adaptation to stress for hypertrophy, hyperplasia, atrophy, and metaplasia.